Welcome to Buckets, brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. My name is Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network, joined by the analytics capper, Albert Wynn. Albert, how was your weekend?
Weekend was great, man. Awesome games in football. Went 6-2 in football. Went 1-0 in NBA. Kept it light for the weekend. Little sad my Dallas Cowboys lost, but another year, same result for us. But how about you?
I'm all right. The Jaguars tried to end the career of my quarterback, the best quarterback in the league, in the Kansas City Chiefs. That's fine. That's fine. Now they have to face Joe Burrow, who beat them last year after being up 21-3, who Mahomes has never beaten. But that's fine. It's fine. I'm not upset at all. Should be totally okay. Exactly how I want things to go. But that's football. This is basketball. And today is your weekend recap episode. We're going to go over the events of the weekend. We'll give you plays, angles about future plays, all those types of things, as well as we always do. We'll tell you who, if we were betting the awards, we'd bet right now. But we'll start with a little exercise I'm going to call kicking out. So what we're going to do out this week is it's kickout week. In the Western Conference, which has become more and more of an absolute mess. The Denver Nuggets and Memphis Grizzlies have established themselves as kind of the class of the conference. They are up on the third seed Sacramento Kings by 4 games. The Nuggets are actually up 5. And if we look at the rest of the conference, really, it's like there's a bunch of teams with 24 losses. The Clippers, the Suns, the Wolves, the Warriors, and the Thunder are all at 24. The Jazz, the Lakers, and Blazers are all at 25. And then you have the Mavericks hanging on just 1 game ahead at 23 losses. So this is getting kind of tight. But look, we're heading into the second half of the year, and there's all these teams that we had penciled in the beginning of the year that were the favorites coming into the year, that there was a lot of attention on, that were the shortest odds. And all 3 teams are kind of in a weird spot. So I want to take a look at those. And what we're going to say is, you can't kick anyone out at midseason permanently, so they get to get back in. But one of these teams, the Warriors, the Clippers, or the Suns, they got to go. Like, we can't let them back in later if they get it together, but both Albert and I are going to have to kick out one of these 3 teams. The Warriors lose the Celtics last Thursday. It was close. The Warriors were up late, but they do lose again on the road. They turn around in the back-to-back, and without Steph Curry and Klay Thompson and Draymond Green and Andrew Wiggins, they beat the pants off the Cavs, because that's just how it goes in the NBA sometimes. But then on Sunday, they lose to the Brooklyn Nets at home, and they're supposed to be kind of invulnerable at home. So you have this Warriors team that's around 500 that isn't necessarily surging, that just got Steph back, but it doesn't seem to have turned much around. They're not instantly like making a run. The Clippers, they lost to the Sixers and Jazz. They beat the Mavericks on Sunday. They've beaten the Mavericks twice in about 10 days' time. I thought this stat was interesting. They have not beaten a team outside of Texas in the year 2023. Since January turned on the calendar, they've only beaten the Spurs, the Rockets, and the Mavericks. Those are the 3 teams that the Clippers have beaten. They've lost everybody else. The Suns, who were at their lowest point a few weeks ago, are actually starting to turn a little bit of a corner. They get Cam Johnson back. Chris Paul comes back. They get a dominant win over the Grizzlies last night. They gave a solid win. The Grizzlies staged a late comeback, but they were up big in that game. And they've kind of started to turn a corner. But overall, the Suns have had chemistry issues all year. The Suns are, as we record this on Monday, 24-24. The Warriors are 1 game under 500. The Clippers are 1 game over 500. All 3 teams are at 24 losses. So, Albert, I'll ask you, if we're going to kick out one team right now, then say you can't bet on this team, like for the next until the All-Star break, okay? Like 3 weeks from now, no bets. Nobody that listens to the podcast is allowed to make any sort of bets on the future for these 3 teams. What's the one team between the Warriors, the Clippers, and the Suns that you're kicking out?
This is a great topic, Matt. I love it. I bet the most popular answer is going to be Phoenix here, but I'm going to choose the Clippers. They are, out of the 3 teams, the only team that has a negative point differential. They only score about 109.7 points per game, one of the worst offenses in the entire league. A lot of people are saying it's 3-point shooting. Their 3-point shooting is average, to be honest. I think the biggest point, or the biggest issue with them, outside of the injuries, of course, is their just aggressiveness in terms of driving the paint. They're in the bottom 10 in terms of free throws made, free throws attempted, and drives to the basket. Maybe they're just less, taking it easy during the regular season. They'll turn that up in the playoffs. But as of right now, I just don't like the vibes in LA. And we've seen with the other two teams, right? The Warriors, they've won 4 championships. We know that they have the pedigree and the experience to get there. Phoenix Suns, with all of their failures in the playoffs, at least we've seen them, win a couple rounds in the playoffs the last couple of years. And they'll have Devin Booker coming back very soon, who, is a top 10, top 20 type scorer in the NBA. So for me, I think it's going to be the Clippers sitting at 25 and 24 with a negative point differential.
Yeah, you talked about the offense with the Clippers, and it's amazing to me. This number, I can't believe this number. I can't believe this number. At dunksandthrees.com, they do schedule adjusted offensive rating. I cite that site all the time. The Clippers are 29th in schedule adjusted offensive rating at 110.7. In for comparison, the average offense in the league is at 113.9. The Celtics are the best at 118. 8 points per 100 possessions between the Clippers and the Celtics is nuts. That's wild. Yeah. They've also faced the easiest strength of schedule so far offensively. They've faced easy defenses, and they still have this terrible mark. Now they're starting to shoot more threes. They started off the year, and I couldn't figure it out because I was like, why aren't they shooting threes? This is what they've done all 4 years, the last 4 years in Los Angeles with Kawhi and PG, is they shoot a ton of threes. They've moved up in terms of per 100. They are now 12th in that category, and in percentage, they're 6th. Like you talk about the driving, they're never going to be like a heavy drive team. Like this is a jump shooting team. That's what they're built as. But they have to shoot high percentage in volume to make up for that, and the absence of that has really killed them. And the Clippers fans' response is going to be, well, look, we haven't had our guys, and this is just like a general thing. Welcome to the NBA.
They never have their guys.
They never have their guys in particular. But even if you want to move past the idea that the Clippers are exceptional in resting guys, which you can't, but if you were to, this is just the NBA. Everybody's missing time. I don't want to hear about it. Phoenix has a better offensive rating than you. Phoenix has been without Devin Booker for 2 months. They have less talent than you do. The Warriors without Steph Curry, they have a better offense than you. How do the Warriors, who missed Steph Curry for a month and a half, how do they have better offense than you? So the Clippers, I think, are a mess for sure. I can't kick them out. I can't. I can't get over the idea of that they're going to be. I feel like they're going to wind up in the 4-5. That's what I feel like. I feel like they're going to wind up. They're going to be one game out of the play-in, and we're going to be like, there they are again. And then they're going to face Dallas, and they're going to beat the hell out of Dallas because they always beat the hell out of Dallas. It's the one team Dallas absolutely can't beat. And then they'll probably face the Nuggets. And that's going to be a really interesting matchup. The Nuggets have destroyed them in 2 games this season. They beat them once without Nikola Jokic. But look, Kawhi's a tough guard and PG's a tough guard. I can't get there. So then it leaves me with this question of if I got to kick somebody out, who are we kicking out? I had Ken Barkley on the show on Friday. If you haven't listened to it, go check that out. It was a really great episode. And he was making the case essentially for the Warriors to be they've told us who they are all year. They've told us who they are, which is an average team, that this team is not good enough. And history says if you don't wind up at the top 3 seed, you're probably not going to make it a run for the title. The reality is you could, based off of that kind of idea, you could probably kick out all 3 of these teams because all 3 of these teams are unlikely to finish with the top 3 seed. But I will go ahead and say that I'm kind of at the point of, for right now, I want to kick out the Warriors.
Yes.
For right now, I want to kick out the Warriors. The Suns, here's what I keep getting back to. The Suns, before Booker went down, the Suns had the best record in the West. They were I have a aged milk ticket on the Suns to be the number 1 seed in the Western Conference that I put in because I was they're better than everybody else. They've already got a lead. What's going to slow them down? So Devin's going to get hurt for 2 months. Whoops. And so, but they're getting everybody back. The Suns also have maybe the most upside to address their biggest issue, which is chemistry. Like their
Yeah.
biggest problem is that it seems, I mean, injuries are the biggest problem. The second biggest problem is that they don't seem to like each other very much between the Jay Crowder thing and the DeAndre Ayton thing and the ownership thing and everything else. Ownership's already in the process of changing hands. There's a good possibility that the Suns make a trade, if not multiple deals, before now on the deadline. There are teams interested. Jay Crowder, it's been interesting to hear kind of like the pushback. There's been this idea of like, well, nobody really wants to trade for Jay Crowder, and like, I'm sorry, but like the Bucks and Portland are two teams I'll tell you right now that are interested in Jay Crowder. That doesn't mean that they're like beating the Phoenix's door down trying to get Jay Crowder, but they can make a deal if they need to. And then you got DeAndre Ayton, who is now trade eligible, and if they put Ayton into a deal, they're going to get good return back. They may not get equal return for a number one pick, but they will get return back to a team that is already good. And as long as they get a capable starting center back, that's all you really need. So there's a lot of options here, I think, for Phoenix. So I can't kick them out. I can't kick the Clippers out. So I'm kicking out the Warriors. They can't win on the road. And at some point, a thought entered my mind 2 weeks ago, and it has been rattling around ever since, Albert. And it's this: when champions go out, they usually go out sad. The 2011 Los Angeles Lakers, coming off of back-to-back title runs, got swept by your Dallas Mavericks. The Miami Heat looked completely overwhelmed in the 2014 NBA Finals. They did make the finals, but they looked completely overwhelmed. So if the Warriors are at their end, and there's a lot of burblings from local media that like, we don't know if this is the last run or not. And it looks like they're going to need to kind of pivot to try and make the most of Steph's remaining time. And that may involve moving one of the big three. If this is the last run, it's probably not going to end well, because of course it ended badly. If it didn't end badly, it wouldn't end. So that's my pick, is the Golden State Warriors.
I mean, I love it. You know, my thoughts on the Warriors season the entire year. They just don't play enough defense for me. You made very good points throughout the season. You know, when the big three are healthy heading into the playoffs and they get a 7-game series, they just end up on top. But this team just has a different vibe around them. Their whole mantra going into the season, you know, building around 2 timelines, I think was a little, I don't know how to say this, a little conceited to a little bit, because or narcissistic, to be able to believe that they can basically build 2 winners on one team. I know they're spending a ton of money, and I know there's a lot of investment there in San Francisco. It's been an amazing run for that team the last decade. I don't know if it's the end like you're alluding to, but they just don't play enough defense for me. And I mean, they don't win on the road, like you said, but they just lost to the Nets without Kevin Durant at home, which is super embarrassing.
Yeah, we'll see how this goes. But for right now, I'm kicking the Warriors out of the title club while Albert's kicking out the Clippers. Suns, congrats. You are the survivor. All right, let's go to the most important covers. This is the mic drop every week. We talk about the most important covers from the weekend that was. Let's start with the Philadelphia 76ers, who go 5-0 on a West Coast road trip. There was a lot of conversation. I heard a podcast that was like, I don't know, this is a tough stretch for him. They can really fall apart here. Yeah, they went 5-0. This team is really good. They can't gain ground on Boston because Boston continues to just like be red hot. They've won 9 in a row. Boston's right back to just killing everybody. I'm going to lose my under ticket on the Celtics, unfortunately, and probably going to lose my Sixers division tickets as well, which is a bummer. But I will ask you this. I kind of think that the market's asleep on the Sixers. I think this team is really good. They're balanced on both ends. If it wasn't for the matchups that I worry about, I would be probably a lot more bullish and probably buying futures on the Sixers right now. I'll just ask you this, though. Are the Sixers the second best team in the Eastern Conference?
I think so as of today. If you were to take out the injury situation, right, Embiid's missed a few games, Harden's missed a lot of games, Maxi's missed a lot of games, being 4.5 games behind the Celtics, they arguably could have the same record right now, right? And the Celtics have been on fire, and they're running away right now with the East. The fact that the Sixers, in my opinion, if they were at full strength the entire year, they would have competed for this number 1 spot. I think the sentiments that you're making, though, I think the market is asleep on this team. There's a lot of hype around the Celtics. The Nets had their run, and they know once Kevin Durant comes back, there's going to be a lot of hype around the Nets. The Bucks, we've seen Giannis, take that team on his back and go to the finals before. So out of those 4 teams, the Sixers are probably the ones that are being overlooked, especially in a city right now where, everyone's focused on the Eagles. So no one's really talking about the Sixers as well. So I like it a lot. Night to night, it's been a great opportunity backing them from a betting perspective. And then from a player prop market, every time James Harden is out, just look at Tyrese Maxey. That guy is an amazing, scorer. And when he puts his head down, I don't think anybody can stay in front of him.
Their path needs to probably be a 2 or 3 seed. They need to get in the 2-3 bracket, because if the Celtics are the one, what the Sixers need to do is they need to put as many teams in front of Boston before they have to face them as possible. The history of Al Horford and just the Celtics in general, their success against Embiid is impressive. Like, they just have his number. They screw him up with doubles. They really turn him over a lot. And like, he's just had a really hard time beating Boston. So I think getting a 2 or 3 seed is going to have to be really important for them. They need to get ahead of Milwaukee or Brooklyn, finish in the 2-3. Now, I like them versus Brooklyn or Milwaukee. I think that Milwaukee's offense is genuinely going to have troubles keeping up with the Sixers, given that they've got enough firepower behind Embiid and Harden and Maxey. Like, that's enough firepower to probably get by. And they have the defense. Like, this team's defense is underrated too. I actually looked this up because I was curious about it. They're only 2 points worse with Harden on the floor per 100 possessions defensively. That's the most narrow differential I've seen on Harden splits in a long time. Also, the overall number is still at like 113, which is fine. When you're facing starters, that's a totally okay number. So Harden has not brought their defense down. That's huge. If they're able to defend with Harden on the floor, that's going to carry them a long way. Brooklyn obviously doesn't have the stuff inside. So if they can do that and then just throw as many teams, if either Brooklyn or Milwaukee winds up in the 4-5, along with maybe Cleveland, throw one of those 2 teams at Boston and hope that team knocks out Boston. Put as many teams between you and the Celtics as possible. Hope that somebody knocks them out. And that, to me, is the Sixers' path to the Eastern Conference title. Let's talk about the Los Angeles Lakers. Woof, we got breaking news as we set to record this podcast. They've traded, or are very close to finishing a trade, for Rui Hachimura from the Washington Wizards. They're going to send Kendrick Nunn and multiple second rounders. They're not having to give up those first round picks to get Rui Hachimura. The Lakers are also surging. They've been on an absolute hot streak lately. The Los Angeles Lakers, as we record this, are currently in the 12th spot in the Western Conference, but they are just a game back of the 6th seed in the loss column. That's crazy, but it's true. They are just one back of the Clippers from being in 6th. That's it. Like, it's wild that that's where they're at, but they're 6-4 in their last 10. They got the big win versus the Grizzlies over the weekend. Got that one. That was a huge one. And then came back from 25 down versus Portland on Sunday. This Rui Hachimura trade, I think, is a slam dunk too. I've loved what I've seen of Rui this year. He's playing big. He's playing physical. There are defensive questions. I actually think with right coaching, he's going to be really good. I think under Ham, he's going to have an opportunity. He gives them size, length, and shooting. And that combination, I think, is going to be really good for them. I've loved what I've seen of Hachimura. The fact that the Wizards let him go for just second rounders and none, to me, is unconscionable. I don't know what they're doing. But this is a really good pickup for them. I'm starting to wonder if the Lakers might actually work themselves into the playoffs, Albert.
Yeah, I think this is a great trade by Rob Pelinka and that front office in LA. You have with Anthony Davis coming back, Matt. Now you have a Mount Rushmore, if you are, front 4 of Rui, Thomas Bryant, who's been playing out of his mind. He's balling out of control right now for the Lakers. Anthony Davis and LeBron James. I mean, that's a really solid power forward center combination there with those 4 players. Rui Hachimura, I know he was hurt for a lot of last year. He almost shot 45% from 3, 44.7% from 3. That's going to be a nice addition to this team. Obviously, he's only shooting 33.7 this year. There's been a lot of, unrest when it comes to the lineup there in Washington. So it's hard to get consistent minutes. He's only averaging 24.3 minutes. But I mean, he's a solid player, 6'8", a lot of good size, athleticism, can guard multiple positions. That's always going to be important when you're playing with LeBron James. Yeah, I think you're right. I think the Lakers are uh, act- actually trending in the right direction, which is something we couldn't have said, a month ago. So props to LA, props to Rob Pelinka, and honestly, LeBron James, since turning 38, everybody sees those numbers on Twitter. It's been crazy what he's doing, and he's put this team on his back just in time for Anthony Davis to return.
The Lakers plus 170 in the market right now to make the playoffs. So a little bit of value there if you're a buyer on the Los Angeles Lakers. A lot of teams are going to get past. And the play-in tournament presents a lot of tough situations there. They'll probably be favored if they're in the play-in tournament, though, just based off of the public sentiment towards them and LeBron and AD. So might be a buy low spot. I'm not going to bet it yet, but I'm definitely interested in where the Lakers go from here. It's still hard to believe this roster is this good. I think Darvin Ham deserves a lot of credit for making this roster kind of come together with guys like Max Christie and Nunn and these type of dudes. So having LeBron goes a long way, but he's figured out a lot of the other answers as well. My last question for you on the most important covers this week, Albert, is why can't your Dallas Mavericks beat the Clippers? Like everyone else can beat the Clippers, but the Dallas Mavericks can't beat the Clippers. Why can't
My
the
Dallas
Mavericks beat the
Mavericks.
Clippers?
Yeah, when you look at the rosters, I think the Clippers just match up really, really well against Dallas. They have 3 or 4 solid wing defenders to throw at Luka. So they match it up between, Nunn and Paul George, and then they put Kawhi in the fourth quarter. And it's really hard to just play against Kawhi. And it's not even on Luka, to be honest, because Luka is playing well against the Lakers against the Clippers individually. But then when you look at the supporting cast, they just take a step down when they play against the Clippers, and both teams play really slow. So when you play slow, you kind of play into the Clippers' hands there. I couldn't tell you the real reason or the focal reason here, but I definitely don't want to face them in the playoffs. You mentioned that it could be a 4-5 matchup. I would pick the Clippers in that potential series for sure.
All right, and as we do every week, we're going to go over the awards, and if we had to bet them, who we bet on right now, we'll tell you if we're actually going to put a bet in on them. We'll start with MVP. For me right now, Luka Doncic is the best value, plus 430. We just talked about the Mavericks and how they're struggling. They're against the spread record over the last 20 games is horrific. Like this team is frustrating. The reason that they're so bad against the spread, though, is because their underlying metrics are good. They're actually top 10 in my power ratings. And every time I look at that, I'm like, how? And like this does kind of explain it, though, is that the underlying metrics say that the Mavericks should be better and they just find ways to lose. Over a long enough timeline, a team with those underlying metrics probably figure out ways to win. They have some trade cards up their sleeve that could probably wind up hurting or helping Luka. I don't think they trade for anybody ball dominant that takes away any of his usage. His numbers are still going to be nuts. It would just be augmentary things. So for me, I think Luka plus 430 is the value given how crazy the market has gone towards Nikola Jokic in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I agree with you. I still think this is a 2-man race, and I think it's a lot closer than what the odds are suggesting. I think a lot of the changes in the odds right now, Jokic at minus 110 as the betting favorite, and he justifiably should be the betting favorite, is really contingent on team success right now. You mentioned it, Denver has been unbelievable. They're surging. They're first in the West. They've won 9 of the last 10 games, whereas the Mavericks are sliding a little bit. They've only won 3 of the last 10. They're fifth in the West. And even if they play amazing the rest of the way, I think the peak for them is third in the West, just because the first 2 teams have kind of separated themselves from the pack. So with that being said, I do think it's still a night-to-night thing, a week-to-week thing when it comes to Luka and Jokic and the numbers that they produce for their teams. It's really just can the teams normalize in terms of wins and losses, and if they can, I think Luka is going to be a pretty good bet coming down the stretch.
6th man of the year, I'll go with Malcolm Brogdon plus 240 at FanDuel. I was talking about this with Ken Barkley. He's the safe pick. Popped high in the media poll. Russ didn't get any votes in that media poll that came out at NBA.com. Russ is still the heavy favorite. I feel like this is going to be a default award where Russ winds up getting dealt or starts or something changes and Russ just the numbers go sideways and people realize like he's more of a detriment. I think the voters already kind of believe that he's more of a negative, even though his actual net rating is positive. So I'll go with Brogdon here, plus 240. It's the safe pick. I'm really tired of trying to figure this award out. Norman Powell is up to second in scoring, but I just wind up believing that there's nobody that's at the 18-point threshold that we've seen historically. Has gone to teams, to guys on teams that have won. So I'll take Brogdon plus 240 and take the safe bet here.
Yeah, I like that look a lot. For me, it's going to be Benedict Mathurin. You mentioned this. It's usually to the team that wins, and the Pacers are not winning. I think they've lost 7 straight. But I mean, Benedict as an individual player has been awesome, especially in January. He's gone through, that proverbial rookie wall, if you will. There's been 11 games in January. He scored double figures in 10 of those 11 games. His efficiency numbers have cooled off, right? 3-point shooting and free throw shooting has been a little down, field goal shooting as well. But that's because there's been an uptick of usage with Tyrese Halliburton being out. But he's kind of negated that, Matt, because he's starting to attack the rim a lot more. This previous game, he was 11 for 11 from the free throw line. I think he was 9 for 10 the game before that. So I do like Benedict Mathurin for 6-man. He's not going to win Rookie of the Year, so hopefully he'll win something.
For most improved player, I'll take Shai Gilgeous-Alexander at plus 140. You're getting a plus 140 on Shai. I went back and forth on Ken about this because he didn't appear in the media poll on most improved player. Laurie got a ton of votes. Laurie's taking a lot of money, which you've seen in the odds. Laurie Markkanen's moved to minus 140. I think it's probably a little early. Look, I still kind of think this is going to wind up with what team has the most momentum at the end of the year, not just because the team performance will influence the vote, but I also think that whoever is still competing is going to be involved in more meaningful games and probably putting up bigger numbers. There won't be as many rest spots. They won't get shut down. The Thunder are really good right now. Like, they're legitimately moving towards a play-in spot. They've been competitive. And if Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is anywhere near the playoffs, given that I think he's almost a lock to be a first-time All-Star this season, I don't see any way that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander doesn't win most improved player if, in fact, he winds up with the kind of numbers that he has had all season and the Thunder are competitive. So I'll take Shai Gilgeous-Alexander at plus 140.
Yeah, you know me, Matt. I love both of those guys, Laurie and Shai. For me, I'm going to talk about Nicholas Claxton at plus 8,000 today. This award historically has always been focused on offense, right? Scoring number jumps, rebounding number jumps, things like that. But Nicholas Claxton has been awesome on defense, especially as of late, right? There's been people in and out of the lineup. It's been an undersized team, the Nets. But he's averaged 3.2 blocks in December, 3.6 blocks in January. He's not going to win Defensive Player of the Year, but I think I've really, really enjoyed his improvements on the defensive end. So for me, I like it at plus 8,000 as the most improved defensive player if we had that award.
In a weird year, that would be the weirdest if ever if a defensive player won most improved. You mentioned him that you don't think he'll win Defensive Player of the Year. I think right now for Defensive Player of the Year, if you have not bet Jaren Jackson Jr., who is minus 195, we're getting to the point where you're probably chasing too much steam at this point. Minus 200 is probably my threshold to be like, now we're in kind of you're at too much of a liability for where the rest of the season can go. If you've already bet Jaren Jackson Jr., because you've been listening to this pod and we bet him like the last 6 weeks or so.
Yep.
For me, it's Nick Claxton. I'll just tell you, I feel really confident in this, Albert. I think that if Jaren Jackson Jr. gets hurt, can't play enough games, doesn't finish the year, then Nick Claxton wins it. He's the most versatile big on the board. He's got the block rate that you mentioned. That block rate really matters. You have to have some sort of tangible stat to go with the defensive numbers. He's advocating for himself openly. I actually think that helps guys that want to win the awards get consideration for the awards. And so him being out there saying, I'm DPOY, even if it's a little bit obnoxious the way he's done it, I actually think that helps his case. So I think that if you're trying to find, like, what do I do about the injury risk to Jaren Jackson because he's already missed so many games? To me, it's you need to be betting Nick Claxton plus 700 right now. I don't think that I think that that's 1-2 in the ballot if it was taken right now.
I think the market right now is set perfectly. Jaren Jackson as the front runner makes sense. I think if you haven't bet him yet, I still think it's a good bet right now at minus 195. If you're looking for insurance in terms of injuries there for Jaren Jackson Jr., it's going to be between Brooke and Nick Claxton. Brooks, noise when it comes to the DPOY has kind of cooled off a lot since the start of the year. But I still think, at the end of the year, people are going to look at the entire season For me, I think it's going to be Brook Lopez. He's still the anchor on one of the best defenses in the entire NBA. Same with Nick Claxton. I think you can't go wrong here. I think if you're looking for, insurance in terms of injuries, either of those are good because you're getting plus 700. Maybe just bet both, right? With that being said, I think I like Brook Lopez just because of the early noise when it comes to DPOY with him.
All right, that's going to do it for Buckets. Thanks for joining us for the weekend recap. You can follow Albert on Twitter at AnalyticsCapper. You can follow me on Twitter and in the Action Network app at HP Basketball. Our thanks to David, our producer. We'll see you guys again next week. We'll be back tomorrow with another Best Bets episode. Best Bets episodes Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then Futures Friday later this week. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you guys again next time. Till then, let's get buckets.